Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're stepping back in time to explore a world that looks incredibly polite and refined on the surface. But let me tell you, underneath all that lace and tea, it is an absolute battlefield. Today, we're unpacking the high-stakes marriage market of Jane Austen's masterpiece, Pride and Prejudice. And we're going to examine a pretty timeless question. Just how easily can our own first impressions deceive us? We absolutely have to kick things off with this brilliant opening hook. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I mean, it's famous for a reason, right? In just one witty little sentence, Austen perfectly establishes the core theme of the entire story. She's showing us this brutal intersection of marriage, wealth, and basic survival. Basically, it tells us that for these families, a wealthy single man isn't just a new neighbor, he is considered rightful property. So that brings us right to the Bennet family. They're an ordinary couple facing an immense, almost suffocating amount of social pressure. Their mission? Marrying off their 5 daughters. For Mrs. Bennet, this isn't just a goal, it's her entire business in life. But you might be wondering, why the intense desperation? Well, the desperation stems from one really stressful legal detail. You see, the Bennet estate is what's called entailed. Because Mr. Bennet has no sons, his property cannot legally be inherited by any of his daughters. So upon his death, the entire estate is going to pass to a distant, frankly rather foolish male relative named Mr. Collins. This means the Bennet sisters literally have to marry well, or they will be left entirely destitute. They aren't just looking for love, they are fighting for their future security. All right, part 1. Pride and Prejudice, the inciting incident. Let's get into it. It's time to meet our main players, and honestly, they could not be more different. On one side, we have our heroine, Elizabeth Bennet. She's got this lively, playful disposition and fine eyes. She's incredibly witty, highly observant, and fiercely independent. And then, on the other side, we have Mr. Darcy. He arrives on the scene with a noble mien and an absolutely staggering 10,000 a year. But here's the catch. Despite all that wealth, he is almost immediately judged by the locals as the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world. So, these two totally opposing worldviews crash head-on at the local Meryton ball. Darcy's friend Bingley tries to get him to dance with Elizabeth, and Darcy refuses with this infamous, absolutely brutal slight. He says she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me. Ouch. Elizabeth overhears this, of course, and her usually playful disposition instantly hardens into a very grounded, deep prejudice against him. This one single moment is the spark that ignites their mutual disdain. It sets our entire enemies to lovers arc squarely in motion. Moving right along to part 2, deceptions and rejections. Just when you think the battle lines between Elizabeth and Darcy are permanently drawn, enter George Wickham. He's a charming military officer who arrives in Meryton and quickly zeroes in on Elizabeth. He spins her this tragic, false history, completely fabricating a story about how the proud, arrogant Mr. Darcy jealously cheated him out of his rightful legacy. Wickham is a smooth talker, and he expertly exploits Elizabeth's existing prejudice against Darcy to completely win her over. It really goes to show just how vulnerable our judgments can be when someone tells us exactly what we already want to believe. Okay, so all of this simmering tension completely boils over at a place called Hunsford. Out of nowhere, to Elizabeth's absolute shock, Darcy shows up and actually proposes marriage. But guys, it is a total disaster. He confesses his love, right, but then he completely ruins it by making sure to emphasize that he loves her against his will, against his better judgment, and despite her lower social standing and her totally embarrassing family. Elizabeth's response here, it is a masterclass in standing your ground. She doesn't just awkwardly say no to his massive fortune. She delivers a fiercely articulate rejection. She flat out accuses him of deliberately sabotaging her sister Jane's relationship with Mr. Bingley. Then she condemns him for his supposed cruelty to George Wickham. And for the grand finale, she calls him out for being completely arrogant and ungentlemanly. She forces this incredibly proud man to actually look in the mirror and confront his own behavior. Which brings us to part 3, a change of heart. So the very next day after that absolute train wreck of a proposal, Darcy hands Elizabeth a letter. And in it, he explains everything, effectively proving that Wickham is actually a vicious fortune hunter. But Elizabeth's real turning point, that happens a bit later when she visits Pemberley, Darcy's breathtaking estate. We're talking real elegance and natural beauty here. While she's touring the house, the housekeeper gives this unexpected, glowing testimony, calling Darcy the sweetest-tempered, most generous-hearted boy in the world. Hearing this genuine praise from a servant, someone who actually knows him behind closed doors, it completely shatters Elizabeth's prejudiced views. For the first time, she starts to see the honorable, generous man hiding beneath that proud exterior.
Now for part 4, Scandal and Secret Redemption.
Just as you think things are finally looking up and some true affection is starting to bloom, bam, the stakes hit the absolute roof. Elizabeth receives some frantic, devastating news. Her foolish youngest sister, Lydia, has eloped with the deceitful Wickham. And the terrifying question hanging in the air is, will this disgrace ruin the Bennet family forever? You have to remember, in this society, an elopement without a marriage doesn't just mean a slap on the wrist. It means permanent infamy for Lydia, and by association, all of her sisters will be considered completely unmarriageable. They are facing total social ruin. But look at Darcy's reaction. Without saying a word to Elizabeth, he immediately jumps into action. He tracks the runaway couple down in London, and he quickly discovers the awful truth. Wickham has absolutely zero intention of actually marrying Lydia. So what does Darcy do? He essentially opens his checkbook, he uses his vast wealth to pay off Wickham's massive, crippling debts, buys him a military commission, and essentially bribes the man into marrying Lydia. He cleans up Wickham's catastrophic mess and saves the exact same family he once looked down upon. And the best part? He orchestrates this entire secret redemption without taking an ounce of credit. And that sets the stage for part 5, True Affection and Resolution. Of course, a secret that big doesn't stay hidden forever. Elizabeth eventually uncovers what Darcy has done for her family, and it fills her with this immense, overwhelming gratitude. But as rumors begin to swirl that the two of them might actually be engaged, Darcy's incredibly wealthy, wildly snobbish aunt, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, catches wind of it. She comes storming into the Bennet home, trying to intimidate Elizabeth out of the match, literally screaming at her, "Obstinate, headstrong girl, I am ashamed of you." But Elizabeth, she completely matches her energy. She firmly holds her ground and flat out refuses to promise that she won't marry him. I just love the irony here. It is absolutely delicious. Lady Catherine is practically foaming at the mouth with fury. She travels all the way back to Darcy and angrily reports Elizabeth's absolute refusal to submit to her demands. But instead of talking him out of it, Lady Catherine's rant about Elizabeth's stubbornness actually gives Darcy the exact sliver of hope he needed. He knows Elizabeth's character well enough to realize that if she truly still hated him, she would have loudly and happily denied any rumor of an engagement. Before we wrap this up, we really need to nail down a core distinction that one of the characters, Mary Bennet, actually points out in the story: the difference between pride and vanity. Pride relates to our own internal opinion of ourselves, whereas vanity is about what we want other people to think of us. Both of our main characters really had to learn this the hard way. Darcy had to overcome his pride, this deeply inflated sense of his own social superiority. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had to overcome her vanity. She was so incredibly vain about her own powers of observation that she let Wickham's cheap flattery completely blind her to the truth. So both characters do the hard work, they overcome those deep personal flaws, and we get the happiest, wisest end possible. Jane and Bingley finally reunite, Elizabeth and Darcy get engaged, proving once and for all that a marriage based on mutual respect and genuine true affection can absolutely triumph over cold, rigid social expectations. And of course, Mrs. Bennet, the moment she hears Elizabeth is actually marrying the man she spent months complaining about, she hilariously completely changes her tune. She just starts rejoicing over his $10,000 a year and the prospect of having a fancy house in town. As we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. Austen's world might be packed with horse-drawn carriages and complicated entailed estates, but you know what? The human psychology is exactly the same today. In our incredibly fast-paced modern world full of curated social media profiles and instant snap judgments, how often are we making the exact same mistakes as Elizabeth and Darcy? How often do our own vanity and pride totally blind us to the real character of the people standing right in front of us? Keep questioning those first impressions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.